Good day, everyone. Welcome to Is Your Way in Your Way podcast. And I'm your host, Cassandra Crawley Mayo. And for my new listeners out there, let me tell you what this podcast is about. It's for individuals who have these obstacles, these self imposed barriers, these limiting beliefs that is preventing you from living your best life on your terms. I am an advocate for individuals to live their best life. And I'm realizing not only do some of us not even know what the best life looks like, but you know and have an idea, but you just are having problems getting there. We talk about topics related to personal and business development and self improvement. And today we have a special guest on, and her name is Rachel Astarte. And I'm going to bring her on board right now. And just so you know, our title for our podcast today is Why You Make a Difference in the World. Hi, Rachel. How are you today?
I'm so well. Thank you for having me, Cassandra. What a lovely show this is.
Well, thank you. I'm so glad that you are here. And what I'd like to do for my listeners is I usually will read the bio first because I want them to know a little bit about you before we dive into really the phenomenal work that you currently do. Now, Rachel Astarte is a licensed family therapist. She is a holistic psychotherapist, transformation coach, author, and an educator specializing in self, solitude, and service. She offers down to earth guidance for socially conscious seekers craving balance in turbulent times. She's an author of Celebrating Solitude, How to Discover and Honor Your Highest Self, as well as novels, screenplays, and articles, all of which focus on self development and connection with our human and non human family. Rachel has a podcast titled Self Talk with Rachel Astarte that helps listeners negotiate a healthy relationship with themselves and others. That's a little bit about Rachel, but we're going to find out a lot more about her in a few moments. Now, Rachel, I'd like to know, and my audience usually likes to know, before you started the holistic psychotherapist and transformation coach and author, what was your backstory until you became what you are today? What did that look like?
Well, I started out in the arts. I started out as a writer and an actor when I was very, very young. And that was my main goal, was to communicate with people, to connect with people through the arts. And I still hold that today. I'm still a writer and I still do, I don't know if I would call it performance, but I do voiceovers, which is sort of like exercising my acting abilities in that regard. But that's what started me on my path, was wanting to connect with other people.
Mm-hmm.
And I began to realize that I wasn't reaching as many people as I wanted to reach just through writing my books or screenplays or poetry or whatever it was. So I thought, well, how can I actually use my talents and help more people? And that's how I first got into transformational life coaching. But as I became a life coach, I also began to get interested in psychotherapy, and my coaching sessions got a little bit therapeutic. And I thought, oh no, I can't do that because legally coaches aren't therapists. You can't do therapy in your coaching sessions.
Okay.
So the best remedy for that would be to go back to school, which I did, and get my master's in marriage and family therapy and go through the whole 5-year process of becoming licensed. I'm licensed in New York State. And that's how I got to be where I am now. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm going to ask a question, which is a no-brainer for you, but some of my listeners are, I'm sure, curious to what is a psychotherapist as you compare to a therapist, psychiatrist,
Right.
yeah. So that's the first question. The next question that I have for you, what is that?
Yeah. So therapist and psychotherapist are used interchangeably. Same with counselor. You could refer to that as a counselor. It's the same thing. You have to be licensed. The difference between psychiatry and psychotherapy is usually more, there's more medicine education with a psychiatrist. You're looking at a medical model. So a psychiatrist, for example, this is the very easy way to separate the two.
Okay.
A psychiatrist would be able to prescribe psychopharmaceuticals, for example.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
A psychotherapist cannot. What we do is we focus on what's going on with you and help you to achieve whatever goals you would like to achieve in your life, from a I work with psycho-spiritual growth, but from a psychological perspective. Now, if somebody does need psychopharmaceuticals, we might refer that person to a psychiatrist. So it's a little bit of I think a psychiatrist would be best described as falling into more of the medical model, like doctors, psychologists, and that kind of thing.
So a therapist and a psychotherapist
basically the same.
It's basically the same. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Just wanted to be clear on that.
Yeah. And there are lots of therapists. There are massage therapists, there are aromatherapists, there's hypnotherapists, but we deal with mental health. Yeah.
Now, I know what qualifies you to do the work, but, and you talked about you wanted to reach more people. Why did you decide on this method, a modality, so to speak, to work with people? Like, it had to be something that triggered this.
Yeah. Well, ever since I was a little girl, I've been very fascinated by the human mind. And growing up, my father was a poet. My mother was an actor. They were also very interested in psychology, particularly depth psychology, through Carl Jung. And so I grew up reading Carl Jung and learning about archetypes and mythology through Joseph Campbell. And, and I became fascinated by why do human beings do what they do, right? And it was like a puzzle to me. Why do some people behave in one way and others behave in a different way when they have the exact same stimulus,
Right.
So that intrigued me. And so when I was very young, I used to have a little like advice column in fourth grade. It was fourth grade. I had an advice. So kids in school would write me little questions like, how do I do this? And I would be like, I would write it back, I just took on this persona of being almost like a, who's
a therapist.
Basically a therapist, but it was like an advice column, and so anyway, it was something that came naturally to me, and I love working one-on-one with people. I love to really sit down with them and get to know them, and I love working with groups as well. So I also teach. I teach classes that are also based on self-development so that we can have the community aspect as well. Yeah. So we can all sit together and learn from each other.
Right. Now, there are a lot of individuals that are out there that's doing self-development, but something is telling me that something is different about you.
Yeah.
What's unique? Why? What's different about Rachel?
Well, where do we start? Everything is different about it. No, but in terms of my practice, I refer to myself as a self-specialist, or most specifically, I work in socially conscious self-development. What that means is, I'm gonna show you, give you tools to live the best life you can live. But that's not enough. Okay. What good is it if we sit here saying, I am fully actualized, I'm doing all the things I want, I'm making all the money I want, I'm comfortable with who I am, and then what, right? So when I refer to socially conscious self-development, what I'm talking about is we do this so that we can make the world a better place, not just us. It doesn't just stop with us, right? We are all interconnected. So when I talk about our human family and our non-human family, I'm talking about every living being that we have a relationship with. And
Okay.
when we are centered in ourselves, when we're living at what I call, we have a healthy foundation of self. That means we know who we are. We know how to manage conflict in a nonviolent, respectful, compassionate way. What we're actually doing is we are contributing positive energy to the quantum field, to collective consciousness. It's not just about us, right? It's not just about us getting what we want. That's lovely. That's a side effect.
Right.
That's
Really?
great. But then what we want to do is be able to take that being out into the world and shine our light. And that affects our brothers and sisters in the world. So whether we do that through our job, whether we do that through volunteer work, whether we do that by relating with the people that we love in our life, or whether we're just waiting in line at the grocery store in a centered place and not getting upset because the line is going too slowly, you know, that changes the energy all around us. Every one of us has walked into a room at one point and felt negative energy from somebody, or positive energy.
Exactly.
Right? So your energy counts. Your energy counts. And that's why I help people to sort of clean up house internally so that they can do that.
Yeah. So do you believe there's a correlation between individuals? There are individuals out there that don't like themselves.
Absolutely.
Whether they know it or not.
Some of them are in high political office.
Yeah, exactly. So, and you talk about becoming your best friend. Now, if you become your best friend, then I think you're getting somewhere in regards to liking yourself, because you wouldn't want to be your best friend to somebody you don't like. So,
Absolutely.
would you explain? And it's done by self-talk. What does that mean?
Yeah. Well, there are many ways to achieve that friendship with yourself.
Okay.
So remember, what we're looking at is the foundation. There is no one like you in the whole world. There's only one Cassandra, at least in this universe, right? Maybe in the multiverse, there are other versions of us, but we won't go there.
Yeah.
So, so who you are is essential. So when we talk about befriending ourselves, what we're really doing is we are cleaning and creating the being that we want to present to the world. So and so when we do that with love, and we do that with non-judgment. And there are 3 areas. What we need to be our best self is really self-acceptance. Right? We need to know that we are fully human beings. We're perfectly imperfect, all of those things. But in order to achieve self-acceptance, in order to be our own best friend, we need 3 elements. We need self-awareness. We need to know who we are and what we're doing. That's correlated with the mind, right? To be aware of ourselves. We need self-compassion. We need to have that love. We need to have that desire to do better. That's part of our spirit. That's what we're here to do. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. And then we also need self-trust. And in many ways, that's the body aspect. Do I trust my whole being, mind, body, spirit? Do I trust that my nerves can be regulated when I get activated? You know, do I know my body? Do I know how it's going to react in certain situations? So all of these things, once we have all those checked off, result in self-acceptance. And then we're able to have that true self-love, true self-acceptance, our best friend. Now, if you think of your own best friend and how you talk to your own best friend, we don't talk to ourselves as nicely as we speak to our best friends, right? So part of it is understanding that you are no different. So why would you treat yourself worse than you would treat your best friend? You are just as important and just as vital in this world.
Exactly. Even if it's an imaginary friend, it's not really imaginary.
That's
I remember when I was younger, I did talk to myself. I didn't answer, but I did have a friend. And what a great idea to use yourself as that imaginary friend. but don't talk back, don't answer yourself, but you can talk to yourself. So I think that's what you explained and expressed was great, is that self-compassion and having that trust and that self-awareness. And in your practice, that's what you help individuals to do. Now, how does that, first of all, how do you get your clients, your patients? Is it word of mouth or marketing or?
Yes, both.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So a lot of it is word of mouth. I'm on a couple of searchable sites. I'm on Psychology Today and a new platform that's quite lovely called Zen Care. Uh,
Heard of that.
and of course, I'm on social media. I'm on pretty much every platform, and
Okay.
and so I do that, and I have a mailing list, and which people can join by going to my website. That I connect with people. I have a Substack.
Okay.
Of course, I have the podcast, so people find me in various different ways.
Okay. So the individuals that find you, have you noticed, is there some commonality on why they come to you? Is
Hmm.
it what is that? I know there's several things, but is there anything like I indicated, like the common denominator on
Hmm.
why people come?
Yes, it is a, an unstable and I would say like an underappreciated sense of self is why
Mm,
they come. And that can manifest in many ways. Imposter syndrome, which I know you deal with on this show,
yeah.
negative self-talk. We'll talk
Hmm.
about that. I think I didn't answer that part of your question. And, it could be weak boundaries with others,
Hmm.
right? Letting people step all over you. The comparison trap. So many people compare themselves to others and then feel less than. That's
Right.
actually part and parcel of imposter syndrome.
Right.
Um, and, or they're having troubles just relating with other people that are in their lives, whether that's at work or at home. So it comes back to not trusting who they are, not having that full self-acceptance of who they
Hmm.
are, uh,
Hmm.
and then just leaking their energy everywhere and not
Right.
knowing what to do with themselves.
Exactly. And they don't know what they don't know. So,
Exactly right.
right. So you kind of help them figure out they have imposter syndrome, or they're comparing themselves to others and things like that. And you talked about, which we didn't talk about, was the negative
Yeah.
self-talk.
Right. So
And
let's talk about that. Yeah.
yeah.
There are a couple of things about self-talk. So when we look at negative self-talk, we have to understand where it's coming from, first of all.
Mm-hmm.
Technically, it only comes from the outside. When we're born, we're perfect little beings, right? We have no issues in the world except the need to be clothed and fed and warm and loved and all
Right.
those things, right? Easy, right? But then we're told things about ourselves that don't
Mm-hmm.
quite resonate, like, shh,
Mm-hmm.
be quiet. We don't care that you're singing at the top of your lungs. The
Mm-hmm.
adults want to be quiet. So you learn, oh, who I am is not acceptable.
Right. Not using your voice. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Children should be seen and not heard. All of that, or sit in your chair, or you're not hungry, but you have to finish your meal, and all that. Or it gets worse. Sometimes we're actually told you're not smart, you're not pretty, you're not attractive, you're not a good person, you're bad. When we tell children when they do something wrong and we say you're a bad boy or girl, that's terrible. What they
Yeah.
did might not have been very good, but that
Right.
doesn't mean that they are bad, right? So we absorb these sentences, these topics internally. When
Mhm.
we're grown up and we're out of the house and our teachers and our caregivers are not there anymore, those beliefs still roll around in our mind, except now it sounds like our own voice. So we
Yes.
start to think that we
Yes.
believe
Yes.
that. All right. So that's where it comes from. But there is a positive side to negative self-talk. Sometimes, and this is one that can kind of come in with imposter syndrome, when you're trying something new or you're about to start some level of growth in your life, And the negative self-talk says, you're not good enough to do that. Who do you think you are? Part of that is protection. There's a part of you that wants you not to fail, wants you not to make a fool of yourself.
Yeah.
So when we really understand negative self-talk, then we can say, I see. So thank you to that voice in my head that's trying to protect me from getting hurt. But I've got this. Right? And so you were saying earlier about talking to yourself but not answering, or I actually do talk and answer. I talk back and forth all the time. I tell this to my clients all the time. Have a full out loud conversation with your highest self, because it's there to help you and protect you. So we can sit and say, you don't think I'm good enough for this job. Tell me why. Well, the last time you had that job, or something like that, you failed miserably. So we can counter that by going, okay, what could I have learned from that experience? So I'm probably not going to make that mistake again.
Right.
So I don't need to worry about that anymore. What else you got? Well, you're too old for that job, or you're too young for that job. Well, I actually have enough experience to do what I can do at this. I'll give you an example. I used to teach college, and I used to teach what every student has to teach and every student hates, which is composition skills, right? Essay writing. Right. And come in at 8 a.m. like, oh, I don't want to take this again. Because I said, why do you not want to take this class? Well, we hate writing essays. Well, why? Because we don't sound like you want us to sound. We don't sound like an academic. And I said, you guys are 18 years old. You think I'm expecting you to sound like an academic? I want you to write like an 18-year-old. I want you to use proper English, and I want you to organize your thoughts properly. But I want your vision. I want your experience of the 18 years of experience of the world. And then that up in everything. Then they had, now they knew what to write about. Yeah. So take the pressure off ourselves, right? And say, I can only do what I can do, and I'm going to make sure I do it damn well. Right. That's how we shift negative self-talk. It's not about looking in the mirror and going, you're good enough, you're smart enough, because we don't believe that. Right. We have to use affirmations that make sense. Like, you may not be good enough. Let's go take a course so you can be. Or you will get good enough with practice. Let's make sure that you do that with intention. Right? That's how we love ourselves. That's how we are gentle and non-judgmental. And that's what shifts negative self-talk to more productive self-talk.
Oh, I love that. And I'm going to start answering myself.
There you go. Look, she's a fabulous woman, Cassandra. Talk to her.
Exactly. And we talk, some people, very seldom do I hear negative self-talk. I might hear inner critic or limiting beliefs.
Yes.
And those create us being in our own way. And I say, it's your way in your way. This is what this podcast is titled. We've definitely been in our way in many instances, and you have helped us, gave us some tools and some strategies on how to get out of our way. So I think that's what you just said was great. So another thing I recall you talking about problems. And we talk about problems are like a bad thing, but you see it as a beacon for something greater. Could you explain that?
Yeah. Again, this comes right back to self-compassion and self-acceptance. Our problems are there for one reason only, which is to tell ourselves, you're out of alignment. You need to get back in alignment. That's all. When something isn't going right, we don't stop. Like, for example, I liken it to a light on the dashboard in your car going off, telling you need to change the oil. So there's the light on the dashboard, and you're driving along and you go, oh, so what do? Do we park the car on the side of the road and walk away? That's broken. Forget it. Dead car. Yeah. No, we take it to the mechanic. We get the oil changed and we get back on the road. We don't blame the car. Right? In fact, the oil it needs to be changed because you've been driving it, because you've been having experiences. Our problems come because we live.
Yeah.
And when we're out of alignment, we feel something isn't right. So that could be anything. It could be overeating. It could be low self-esteem. It could be depression, anxiety, imposter syndrome, all the things. They're all there to point us in the direction of what we need to do to get back in alignment. The light on the dashboard goes off. You have been snacking too much.
Yeah.
Stop.
Okay.
You've put on 15 pounds. Oh, now I'm a terrible person. No. That's the same thing as parking the car, right? Don't park the car.
Right.
Get back in alignment. What do you need to do to with love, without judgment, to get yourself where you want to be?
Right.
Now, and I stress this. If you want to be 15 pounds heavier and you're really enjoying snacking at night, do it.
Right.
Do it. If it's making you happy, what we're talking about is when we know, when our highest self is telling us something's off. We need to fix that. So if we look at our problems in a non-pathologizing way, in other words, in a way that doesn't shame us, then we have the energy to make the changes that we need to make.
It's like self-judgment.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. I want to take this somewhere else, and I understand. I want to talk about mental health. Mental health is huge, and I believe it was huge before COVID. And I think this is my thought, and I think COVID enabled it to be the thing of the present, and because of the stereotype, so now, wow, you hear more about it with COVID, that COVID caused this. We have anxiety, we have all of that. And you indicated it's just like a sickness to me. It's a sickness. It's no different than having cancer or having heart problems or COPD or anything like that. But when you have that denotes that there is a problem. And I'm certain that you have perhaps had patients that have had mental health challenges. There's some that you have to have medication, others maybe not. It could be the low self-esteem, those limiting beliefs, that negative self-talk. How do you work with somebody that, if you've identified they're just having some mental health challenges? How would you handle that, or what would you do about that, or how would you say, or how would you start that process?
Well, when you say mental health challenges, I would assume that that's anyone who comes into therapy is having some kind of a mental health challenge. Are you referring to people who might need medication, or are you referring to people who just have some stuff they want to work out?
Just have some stuff they want to work out, like anxiety, maybe some depression. And depression could come from a situation somebody just passed, just have So I'm talking about that, not the ones that we know. There's some that do need medication, but there are others that don't. It could be a very temporal thing.
Right. Okay, great. Now I just wanted to clarify. Sure. So the very first thing that I do when I sit with a client is tell me about yourself, just like you would when you're having a cup of coffee with somebody. Tell me about yourself, except of course I'm listening with a clinical ear instead of just buddy having a coffee with you. I'm fascinated by, how did you come to this place where you are now? And most importantly is when we set goals, which we often do in the first session, where are you now and where do you want to be? Right? That's really important, because as I said, if you're snacking at night and you don't really care about the 15 pounds, well, then that's not an issue. It's not me to say, well, you need to stop doing that, because that's not my life. It's where do you feel out of alignment? Where do you feel like you're not living the life that you want to live? And then we work together collaboratively. So obviously I have tools, I have different mindset shifts that I can guide people with that help them to get back into alignment. So that's how we work with it. And it does depend on what they're bringing to the table.
Right.
So obviously we're going to work with grief. If you've just lost someone, we're going to work with that differently than we might work with imposter syndrome, just because we were just talking about that, right?
Exactly.
It's a different approach. But interestingly, all roads lead to self-acceptance. All roads lead to a strong foundation of self.
Okay. Great. You have, is there I want to say, is there a focus, like do you just work with women?
No.
Is that correct? You work with men as well?
I work with men. I work with pretty much, I would say that the age range that I've ever worked with is between 18 and 81. That's my youngest and my oldest so far in my career. So I work with anyone who's interested in this kind of work. And when I talk about my niche, I'm really talking about, again, these socially conscious self-development.
Okay.
People who are interested in socially conscious. So again, they're not just doing this for themselves, that ultimately they're doing this because the world becomes a better place when you're a better person.
Right. Why you make a difference in the world is our title for our podcast today. Now, we talk about that inner work. When do you know, or is it collaborate or mutual, that the inner work has been done? I think inner work is always a work in progress. We can always work on our inner work. But when do you know that is the time frame for the work? That depends on what the time frame. I'm certain it depends on what that individual's going through, because I remember I've been in therapy myself. I always say I've been in therapy all my life. I've not been to a psychotherapist. But I personally like it when they tell me, I'm not going to see you forever. You know, I got to let you go sometimes, at one time or another. When do you cut the ties? Like, what happens when you say, you know what? I think they got this. Let me cut the string on this.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting, again, how my practice is different, is that I never cut the tie.
Okay.
I let it go. But so what I mean by that is this. Sometimes I'll have a client who will just come for one session because they have something they really want to bang out. And I will give my all, right, in that 50 minutes to help them as best that they can. So they can come and see me as often as they want. Could be weekly, could be bi-weekly, could be monthly. So what generally happens, to better answer your question, is when I have a new client, I will work with that person usually weekly for a while.
Okay.
Then they'll move to bi-weekly so that they have a longer stretch to practice what we've talked about. Then maybe they go to monthly, right?
Okay.
Like now it's like taking the training wheels off, go live in the world the way that you have been working on. And then sometimes people will say, I feel good. I don't think I need this anymore. And I say, wonderful. And so what I mean by saying I don't cut the tie is I say, come back if you ever need a tune-up. Just come back whenever you want. And sometimes that will happen. I can't tell you how many people have said, I'm done with therapy. And I say, blessings, be on your way. Right. And then 6 months later, I'll get an email saying, hey, do you have time for a session? I'm like, of course, come back in. Yeah. So it's a little tune-up, just to and sometimes they'll just let me know, hey, I just want to let you know some of my wins this year and some of the things that I've learned. And what happens, as you said, because this is an ongoing process, we're all constantly working on ourselves in not in a painful way, but we're conscious of what we're doing. New awareness comes up. Right. So they may have been working with a lack of self-esteem when we first started working together. Then they have the self-esteem, they go off into the world, and having that self-esteem then opens up something else. Like, I'm having trouble connecting to people because I feel so comfortable in myself, but I don't feel that I'm connecting with a lot of others. So that will bring in a new area that we can work on. So it just develops over time.
Okay. Okay. Rachel, as we talked earlier, prior to this podcast, I talked about me being an advocate for individuals, empowering people to start living their best life on their terms.
Mm-hmm.
And as we come to a close on this podcast, let's say you had let's say I'm really struggling with living my life, my best life. Number one, what is my best life? Like what? Because when you said that why you make a difference in the world, I believe when you're doing what you're ordained to do, you do make a difference in the world. And I also think when you are that you are a happier person. I'm not saying consistently all the time, but what is it like when you can't wait to get up in the morning because you're living your purpose?
Right.
How would you go about helping a patient? They're like, I went to Cassandra's workshop on how to design your best life, and I'm really struggling with how to do that. And I'm not quite sure. What would you do? What would you say to that patient to get them started?
Well, first understand that everything comes from you. Mm-hmm. Start where you are. Start being okay with exactly where you are. And that sounds trite, but I think we should sit with that for a second. What it means is self-acceptance of where you are now and giving yourself grace for wanting to make a change in your life.
Mm-hmm.
That's why the lack, like we don't want to judge ourselves, and we want to do this with love and compassion, right? So what does it mean to live my best life? Well, that's a huge question. Why don't we start with now?
Right. Okay.
What does it mean to be the best Cassandra or James or Joan or whatever right now? That could be it could be just changing your posture.
Right. Okay.
Taking a deep breath when you're feeling stressed, slowing down, right? The past is done. The future isn't here. The present is really the only place that we can work with. And the present doesn't even last very long because it's the future very quickly.
Exactly.
And it's the past very quickly.
Right.
So it's this is all we have. Right. So first I would say slow down, throw away ambition, take one step at a time, start with love and your loving desire to do this work. Right. Already, if you've decided you want to try to make a change in your life and live your best life for the purposes of making the world a better place.
Right.
That's beautiful.
Right.
So many people don't do that. Give yourself credit for that.
Yeah. Yeah. So in other words, it's like get in your good place, and from there, once you're in that good place, then you can, like you said, you don't stay in the present all the time. You move to the future. Well, I think this is kind of what I wanted to do, or I always wanted to write a book, or, I always wanted to be promoted. I think it's time for me to get promoted. And I like that, like start with where you are now and then think about where you'd like to be later on. Is a good way and a good approach. And I ask that question because in my workshops, I do have a workshop, how to design your best life. And first of all, we have to do the foundational part first, to kind of understand, why we have this negative self-talk and can't move further than what we want to move to. So my question for you, my last question for you is, you're doing some great work. Where do you see yourself in the next 3 to 5 years?
Well, interestingly, because it's come a long way, I see myself doing the same thing, but hopefully for a larger audience.
Okay.
Yeah. So I still have my one-on-ones, my one-on-one sessions, and the courses that I teach. And I'd really like to just continue building that. So I think in 3 to 5 years, I'd love to see more people doing this beautiful self-work.
Right. Okay. Okay. Any words of wisdom before we wrap up to the audience? You
Yeah,
gave it a lot of tidbits, takeaways, nuggets, and all.
yeah. I think I'll just repeat what I said earlier because I kind of glossed over it, but don't forget how powerful you are, right? You are so essential to the quantum field, to collective consciousness. Everything that you do is energy. So, and that's not pressure, right? But that's just to say you have a choice every minute of the day of how you want to show up today in this moment.
Right.
You're very, very powerful. So don't forget that.
Yeah, that's beautiful, Rachel. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time today, your wisdom. I've gained a lot of knowledge from you, and I'm certain that my audience has. And to tell my audience is, where can they reach you if they want to get in touch with you, Rachel?
They can go to my website is the easiest, which is rachelastaretherapy.com. Or some people would be like, how do you spell all that? I can't. You can also go to myselfpath.com, myselfpath.com, myselfpath.com.
Okay. Even though you're licensed in the state of New York, you could probably, if someone is looking for someone like yourself, you could probably give them some information on how they can find a psychotherapist in their area.
Yes, if they're looking for psychotherapy, I can certainly do that. But I also do transformational coaching for people all over the world.
Okay. Okay. Well, thanks again. And to all my listeners, I'm certain that you have enjoyed this as much as I have. And just know that if there's something that hit you, that got you fire in your belly from this conversation, please share this podcast with someone that you know it'll be of value. And know that I go live every Wednesday at 1, every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thanks again. Bye for now, and God bless you all. Thank you again, Rachel.
Thank you, Cassandra.